right. Well, it's so awesome to be together again. Thank you for coming out again. It's awesome. We had a great Sunday last Sunday. I really just thank everybody for your support. I'm told if I back up, I get to walk more. So I'm going to back up again. We've been talking about a seat at the table. And last Sunday, we talked about how bigger tables are God's idea. This Sunday, I want to take you back. Some of you, it's current, but I want to take you back to the middle school cafeteria. I know Pastor Mike and I were talking about this, and he actually said that psychologically, a lot of us have actually blocked out middle school. So when we talk to our kids, we think, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. And that's because psychologically, we have actually blacked it out. So I'm going to take you back to that cafeteria, and let's imagine you have just moved cities. You have just moved towns, and you are brand new. You walk in to the cafeteria. The morning's been okay because you just had to get to your class, and your teacher told you where to sit, and you knew you belonged there because she took attendance, and you were like, okay, I'm in the right place. But the cafeteria is an entirely different situation. So you get in, you've got your food, maybe you bought lunch that day, you've got your tray, and what do? You start scanning. And what do you see? Maybe you see, you guys can help me with this. What kinds of people do you see? Help me out. What did you say? You see popular kids. And if you're me, you're like, oh, well, I'm not sitting there. So you might see the popular kids. What else do you see? You see jocks. And if you're like me, you're like, oh, I'm not sitting there. Who else might you see? Band kids. Yes, that might work. Band kids might work. Somebody give me a head nod. Okay, band kids might work. What else might you see? Nerds. Related to the band kids, but sometimes a little bit different. Okay? You with me? Any other categories that you really think of? Something girls. What is it? Preppy girls. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Today, the way I'm dressed, I might sit there, but I don't always dress like this. The preppy girls. Yeah. So, we do this. We talked a little bit about this last week. We have a natural tendency to make categories, and some of this is just instinct. It actually has kept us as a species alive for thousands of years. But the challenge, actually, is that God calls us to mix it up. We talked about bigger tables are God's idea. And when we talked about tables last week, does anybody remember? We kind of broke down that metaphor a little bit. What does a table represent? Resources. Yes, when we're at a table, we share food or water or drinks, which are actually some of our resources. What else happens at a table? We talk, we have conversation, right? So maybe we would say, we attend to, we share our attention with somebody. And then the last one, which I know you all know, we share our care at tables. So this week, we are kind of expanding the idea about tables. And I want to share a Bible verse with you guys. From Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, it says, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Now, do you think the audience for this letter, we don't actually know who the author is, but traditionally we've thought of this letter being sent to people who were culturally Jewish but had said yes to Jesus. And they were really drawn to the traditions of their Jewish heritage, but they were also really persecuted. they were really in danger. So keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Do you think those brothers and sisters were from the same nuclear family? No, they just had familial ways of talking to one another. They had generous tables, generous definitions of what it meant to be family. And then it says, do not forget to show what? Hospitality to strangers. And then it says, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. So today we are going to be talking about hospitality. Now the good news is that hospitality is not about making salami flowers. For some of you, this is really important. I know when I hear the word hospitality, I kind of check out because I think it's for the salami flower people. Now, I actually think it's really important as a church that we know who in our family here can make a salami flower. If you have ever made a salami flower, I need you to raise your hand. Yes, we have salami flower people. That is amazing. The good news is that this message is not just for the salami flower people. And everybody said, amen. Amen. Okay. Whew. Thank God. I have never made a salami flower. I don't know. I kind of think my husband would be more likely to make a salami flower than I would. But you know, if I ever make you a salami flower, I'm probably really trying to get you to do something. So the good news, it's not about salami flowers. So what is hospitality actually about? Sometimes when we study the Bible, we like to talk about the original languages because that helps us get at what the person writing this actually was talking about. It's helpful actually in English if you've ever wondered what something actually means. If you go back and you try to see where the word comes from, it can really be illuminating. So that's actually true of this word hospitality. It's actually really illuminating. And it's definitely not about salami flowers. Hospitality in Greek, which is what the early Christians wrote letters in, is Philoxenia. Philoxenia actually means love of the stranger. Love of the stranger. That is definitely not salami flowers. Love of the stranger. Now, the problem is when we hear the word stranger, this is a little word association game time. You hear stranger, you think danger. You guys are good at that. When you hear stranger, you think danger. And that's what we were taught as little kids. Some of you would remember there was like a hound dog who represented this. Okay, yeah. You remember the hound dog? He represented this whole curriculum about stranger danger. If you know what I'm talking about, give me like a head nod or a hand. Okay, remember the hound. I should have found that picture. That would have been fun. But what happens is not only, this is the same as last week. Remember we talked about our instincts are surprisingly hard to overcome our instincts, especially when the instinct of stranger danger is reinforced by things that we're taught as a kid. And actually, I have taught, to be honest, I do teach my kids basics of stranger danger. That is okay. Are you with me? Basics of stranger danger. But when it gets in the way of God's table vision. When stranger danger gets in the way of God's table vision, God's vision for bigger tables, put that leaf in, invite that person, go and say hi. That's when we get called to work on it. We just get called to work on it, and that's what today is about. Work on discerning when is the right time for stranger danger. Now, I simplified this idea of hospitality. Hospitality is simply helping people far from home feel at home. Or helping someone who doesn't feel at home. I remember when I was newer to ministry, I was the associate pastor at a church actually in Medfield. And they had a really robust women's ministry for women over 50. And I was 28. So part of my job was to run the women's retreat. Do you think I felt comfortable and at home on a women's retreat with women over 50 when I was 28? No. I was the only 28-year-old in the room. I was the only one who hadn't had kids. The list goes on. And they all had their friends, and they all had their ways of doing things, which is fine. But I really didn't feel comfortable. And that, whether it's the kid in the cafeteria not knowing where to sit, whether it's the person at an event who just doesn't fit the rest of the crowd, those are the people that I believe God calls us to have an eye open for. Now, there's actually it gets bigger than that. And Faith's vision for this sermon series is actually even bigger than the person who feels uncomfortable in the spaces that you're in. Faith has this thing, you guys might know this, we are supposed to, it's on your thing, we're supposed to love comfortably. Is this called a vision statement or a mission statement? Mission. I'm looking at the pastor. Okay, good. Mission. It's a mission statement. We are supposed to love radically. So you all did this to yourselves, Maybe it was Pastor Mike. I don't know. But your mission statement is love radically. Now, what happens when you decide you're going to love radically, it means that you have left the zone of comfortability. Comfortability is love normally. Okay? Comfortability is love the people who look like you. Love the people who like the things you like. Love the people who root for the same teams you root for. Love the people who vote like you vote. But you all have decided that you are going to love radically. That is uncomfortable. And some of you, the Lord has really given, I think the Lord just planted this love radically in some of you real deep. Because some of you, the Lord has called to love people who are really vulnerable. There are people who are moving to Framingham, or maybe moving to the town that you live in, who have moved here from other countries because their countries are unsafe. We call those people refugees. There's a technical definition for refugee as a person who is unable or unwilling to return to their country of nationality due to a well-founded fear of persecution based on one of these things: race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. And God is calling you all not just to love those who feel uncomfortable in places and spaces that you're already in, but God is calling this church to love the refugees. It's really, I have to say, this is one of those things where when I was talking with Pastor Mike and the elders about whether or not God was calling me here, this was a piece that felt like God. I'm coming to you from a church where over half of our folks were from East Africa, and the majority of those folks were refugees. And I have been working for the past 4.5 years with the teens, especially from those families. And they have taken my heart. They have taught me so much. The way that they do family life is really different than I was taught to do family life. The amount of responsibility that the teens are expected to have is very different than the culture that I'm coming from. The responsibility that the teens have for their younger siblings is very different. The sheer number of children is very different. And I've been so changed by knowing them. And it's not just me, my kids actually, especially my 10-year-old, is very different because he has known these families. So today is an invitation not only to open our eyes to the people who are normally in our everyday spaces. Like I just met this mom at a basketball game last weekend. Her name's Gunjun. And, you know, if God hadn't started training me by putting me in a place where I was getting to know families who were very different from me, I don't know that I would have had the eyes to see Gunjun and to meet her. And she's a fascinating person. Now, I want you to know a little bit more about this biblical value of hospitality. Oh gosh, I skipped a whole thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes you feel at home. We'll back up. What makes you feel at home? This is a participatory part again. What makes you feel at home? Think about those things. You go on a trip, you visit someone, what are those things? A bed, yes. Rest, also related to that. Yes, keep going. Food, yes. Sitting down at a table, yeah. Family, yeah. Yeah, some fun, some activities, sports or something like that. Games, yeah. Yeah. They're simple things, right? To feel at home, to feel more at home than you might feel if you were uncomfortable, you know, you need some food, you need some water, some rest, some fun. And you know, when you start thinking about what it means, the things that we actually need to feel at home, it gets actually really simple, doesn't it? So last year, this time, my husband Nick and I were in Kenya visiting with some of our friends. They invited us to their village. They're part of the church I'm coming to you from. And those folks aren't refugees, but they come from a village, and they had started a development program that was feeding orphans. So they were incredibly hospitable. They had 4 goats. When we left, they had 3 goats. Yeah, they killed the goat for us, and I heard it. It was disturbing. But it was very generous of them. And they have some foods, and we told them, we want to eat what you eat. This is a cultural experience for us. We want to eat what you eat, which was great, but except the coffee situation. They don't drink coffee. They drink chai, and they don't serve it right away. It comes out around like 10:30 if you're lucky, maybe 11. And, you know, coffee isn't just a want when you're used to having it. It's sort of like medicinal. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. So they had these little coffee packets that we poured into our milk and water that they heated up for us. But man, by the end of 2 weeks, I just couldn't wait to get a real cup of coffee. And then the other thing was that we ate a lot of, I wrote down what this is called. We ate a lot of ugali, which is kind of like this cornmeal paste. And they eat it like every meal, and it's kind of looks like mashed potatoes, but it's thicker, and you make it into a little like patty, and you can scoop things up with it. So you can scoop up some greens, and they make a huge deal of washing hands. They always boil water. It's not boiling water they run over your hands. That would hurt. But, it's hot water. It's going to kill the germs. So it's okay. It's okay to eat with your hands. And Nick loved eating with his hands. He was like, I am home. These are my people. Who needs utensils? God gave us these. And by the end of the week, I had tried to be a good visitor, and I just really wanted a fork. So for me to feel at home, it was about the coffee and the forks. And, it's that simple. That's my point, is helping people who are far from home feel at home is sometimes just about coffee packets and forks. And, but I want to show you one more thing. Okay, we looked at that already. I want you to see that actually this Christian tradition of hospitality is rooted in something that happened earlier. It happened actually for the Hebrew people. And actually, that whole area has a big value of hospitality. But for the Hebrew people, well, you're going to see it yourself, I think. What we're going to do is we're going to look at a passage from Genesis chapter 18. And actually, the verse that we read from Hebrews references this passage. And this is how it goes. The Lord appeared to Abraham. So kind of the founder of Judaism. This is way, way back. Near the great trees of Mamre, when he was sitting at the entrance to his tent. So he's at his tent. So Abraham is home, okay? Abraham is home in the heat of the day. Now, what I want you to look for in this next part, I want you to see whose initiative it was, these acts of hospitality. I want you to tell me if Abraham initiated this or if the travelers initiated this. So Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. So, who initiated this encounter? The men were what? Standing. And what did Abraham do? He ran to them and bowed down. Now, the bow down thing reminds me that we actually, to feel at home, we need respect. Somebody give me a head nod. We do. We do need respect. And then he says, if I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, he's talking to the leader of these 3 people, do not pass your servant by. Now, I want you to listen for those things we said we need in order to feel at home. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash. We actually, to feel at home, we need a way to wash, and we need the resources to be able to wash with. Wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed and go on your way now that you have come to your servant. Now, the story goes on, but I want you to see how simple the things were that these travelers needed in order to feel at home. Are you with me? Simple, simple stuff. Now, it's so cool. What happens, very well, we'll do as you say, and then he asks Sarah to get 3 seahs of the finest flour. 3 seahs is 36 pounds. I don't even know how many Costco bags of flour it would take to equal 36 pounds, but this woman was busy, really busy. She made a ton of food, a feast she made for these folks, and they ate. And do you know what? These are the people The story goes on. If you know a little bit about the story of Sarah and Abraham, you might know that they were old and they hadn't had any children, but God had promised them that they would have so many, they would outnumber the stars in the sky. And these were the people who actually predicted that Sarah would have a child. And that's when she laughed. These are the people who actually changed Sarah and Abraham's lives and went on to then impact all of history thereafter. And this verse we read, do not forget to show hospitality for strangers because you might be entertaining angels. That is a direct reference to this passage. When we are unusually hospitable, when we help people far from home feel at home, or when we help someone who feels uncomfortable in the spaces that you are normally comfortable, not only do you love radically, but those people just might change your life. And we don't have to wait for them to initiate the encounter. We can take a note from Abraham, and we can step out in faith because we know who we are, beloved children of God. So, our lives are changed when we help those far from home feel at home. Hospitality is, that's just a double. Okay, so your next steps, just start praying about this. Lord, what are you calling me to do? Some of you have some margin in your life that you haven't had before. Maybe kids are away, maybe you're pre-kids, maybe you've got kids, but you want them to experience this adventure of knowing people who are far from home. So you can pray about it. Lord, what are you asking me to do? It's important in all of this as we put leaves in our tables and expand the tables that we recognize that this is a process and all of us are on a journey and we need to be gentle with one another and generous to one another as we grow and learn. We can ponder about maybe how small our tables have been and how big they could be. And then you might peek into one of these opportunities faith is providing. We have a small group that's going to be starting up soon in February called Momentum Yes, where we are going to be able to explore unreached groups and discover our role in sharing the hope of Jesus. You can talk to Tim about that. Tim, can you raise your hand for everybody? We also have a new Refugee Alliance faith team, which kind of blows my socks off. This is the radical part of Faith Community Church. We are so serious about loving people that we are creating an entire new ministry, helping people connect to people who are far from home and don't feel at home. Helping people have those actual, tangible helps that they need to feel at home. I heard a story, Pastor Mike's son, Matthew, through these organizations was able to help a young person go to his college campus, register for his classes, and he walked him around campus. And it's just so simple. Those are sometimes the things, or helping people find the right grocery store that has the foods that they are used to that will help them feel at home. So you can scan the QR code. You can come see me. I have more flyers. Or you can go see Miss Carol. She can help you sign up to learn more about that opportunity. And finally, if I had a season where I was like, I do not know what I am doing interculturally. And mostly, that's still true. I mostly don't know what I'm doing. I ask questions, I say sorry, and I'm just curious. But there are ways of actually being more equipped to love across differences. And this training that Pastor Dorian, is leading up. Pastor Dorian, everybody knows you, but will you just wave? Thank you. You can ask him about it. He's excited about it, and I am too. So together, we will be expanding our tables and putting those leaves in. Amen? It's important that we know that Jesus has a table too. And today, we have an opportunity to come to the table. And let's get ready for that. On your tables, you'll see what we call communion elements. These are grape juice and bread. There's gluten-free and regular bread. Thanks to Mama O. Whoop, whoop. Make a joyful noise for Mama O. And I want to share with you what Jesus said about his table. First of all are invited to Christ's table. If you confess Jesus is Lord and you believe that God raised him from the dead, we would call you a Christian. And this meal is for you. If you're not sure where you're at with Christ, this is a really great place to meet Jesus, is at his table. So you're invited to draw near to the Lord and share this drink and cup, because Jesus would want you to feel at home. Jesus was eating with his disciples during what we call the Last Supper. And as they were eating, Jesus took some bread and he blessed it. And then he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "This is my body given for you." In the same way, Jesus also took the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, poured out for the forgiveness of sins." It's for you too. So as you're comfortable and as we sing this song, we want you to just take this time to be with the Lord at his table. If you're not ready to take the elements, that's fine. You don't have to. We don't want you to do anything you're not ready for.